Hey, what's going on, everybody? And let me tell you, we have a really, really cool conversation today with Nick Dewar, talking everything from front of house music mixing with some really, really cool artist names that you probably know, to going on tour, to talking about just the music industry in general. Definitely want to listen to this full one. Stick around. Hope you'll enjoy it. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jacob Restituto, and I'm a musician from Northport, New York. And today we have the absolute pleasure of having Nick Dewar on the channel. Coming from the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast. Thank you so much, Nick, for taking the time out of your schedule to be on this
Yeah,
channel.
absolutely. Super glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, my pleasure, man. Really looking forward to the conversations that we're going to have, especially just all your whole world of the front of house mixing on tour. I think it's just an interesting world, so I'm really looking forward to hearing
Yeah.
your insights on it. So for people that aren't super familiar with your story, can you give me a little just insight? Go as far back as you want, or as recent back as you want. Just kind of just your journey and getting to where you are and who you are as a creative.
So I'll try to keep it short, but my I started playing music in like fourth grade. My mom is a music teacher, so I was always surrounded by it, and started playing drums in school bands and stuff like that. And then when I was in seventh grade, started playing guitar, started playing in pop punk bands and covering Blink 182 as most people of my age did. And started playing shows, and got to a point where I needed, the band was writing songs, and we needed somebody to like figure out how to record demos and like how to do all that stuff. And I was like, well, shoot, whatever, I'll figure it out. Learning how to record and what all of that stuff really meant. I used Sony Acid Studios, for anybody who knows what that is, way back in the day. And yeah, just kind of started from there, and then getting like the basics down, and then started playing at a venue, and the venue needed somebody to run sound, and I was like, I guess I could figure that out, and just started doing some stuff there. And I mean, it was like maybe a 200 cap venue with like a 16 channel analog like
Yeah, for
Mackie
sure.
console. It was super basic, no monitor wedges at all. Like it was just very like DIY metal venue. So started doing that, and then I moved to Los Angeles. I mean, I kind of like expanded a little bit here and there, and then moved to California and Los Angeles, and started working for a studio here.
Sorry that you
And
broke up right there. Started working for which
oh,
studio?
sorry, it doesn't exist anymore.
Oh,
But it
you
was
say a studio. Whatever,
a
whatever
studio.
there
Yeah.
was there was broke up. So I thought you said a
Oh
studio
yeah.
name.
Yeah. No, sorry. So I started working for a studio.
Okay.
They don't exist anymore, but basically it was a really cool building. They bought out a warehouse and they put in a recording studio. They had producer suites. And then they also had lockout rooms and rehearsal rooms for bands to come in and do like prep for tours. And we would do random like festival shows and different things like that outside of the venue as well.
That's cool.
And so I started learning, like going into these rehearsal rooms and setting up for artists, and learning how to like use the live consoles, and learning how to like deal with all of that stuff, and started going out on more and more gigs. And then just kind of it just kind of blew up from there. I started working for a production company, and started meeting people, started getting asked to go on tours, and now pretty much all I do is tour
Yeah,
entirely.
which is wild, man. Which is a do you
Yeah,
enjoy the tour life, or is it grueling for you?
it's both. I do really enjoy it though. It's I mean, it's hard. Like I'll be honest with you, it's not what a lot of people think it is. You end up getting a ton of really cool opportunities. Like I literally get paid to travel the world,
Yeah,
and that's insane. The same time though, like that also means you miss holidays, you miss birthdays, you miss weddings,
yeah.
funerals, all of that kind of stuff. And like it gets really hard, at the end of the day, I there's very little I would rather be doing.
Most musicians' dreams, or artist dreams, whether it be front of house or the musician aspect of it, but just the tour life is whether they realize how hard it is or not. I think that most people, it's a goal of many. Just taking it a couple steps back, I'm from Long Island, which is an hour outside of this New York City,
Mhm.
and the area I grew up in, I was a when I first started playing music and like playing shows and stuff, I started out very like acoustic singer songwriter.
Sure.
Now it's transitioned more into like pop rock kind of stuff, but back then it was very acoustic singer songwriter, and I was just laughing because the whole area we had was a whole metal scene. I don't know, it was just the whole Long Island scene was I mean, Taking Back Sunday came out of here, and like
Oh yeah.
it's just this whole like pretty heavy rock scene. So like, I don't know if a lot of people that are, unless you play shows that you might not know this, typically when a live show, when they make they call it the bill, when they put the bill out, there's probably like 5 or 6 bands on the bill, meaning 5 or 6 acts playing that show. You obviously know all this, but like for the people that aren't super familiar with it.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
so it'd be like, these 3 bands, then it'd be me, and then it'd be another 3 bands. And I was just one acoustic singer songwriter in this whole act, these screamo, like, coming in with like, goth, like the eyeliner. And I'm like, it just didn't, hey, you do what you can to get out. But man, it was
Sometimes a show's a show.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was laughing because like, there's no monitoring, there's no nothing. It's just 200-person venue. Like could assume probably the bathroom that you guys had stickers everywhere from all these bands, like it's just
Oh yeah.
such a vibe, dude. It's such a vibe.
Uh-huh. Yep. Yeah.
But
I mean, sometimes I do miss that, but
hmm.
there's some other perks that are
Yeah, I
pretty nice
bet. I
where I
bet.
am now.
So that being
Yeah.
said though, so I would love to just, you kind of glazed over it, which is totally fine. But I want to kind of get into a little bit more of the nitty gritty of just the grueling aspect of like, you put in a work to get to where you are. And
For sure.
I think that so many people could be like, oh, well, I'll just start doing this and doing this and doing this, and not realizing the fact that, well, hey, I have to stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning to close the venue or whatever, like stay with the, whatever, close the show.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what the story is. I'm just making up, but like,
Sure.
to then going on tour with all these, bands like, Ty Verdes or the All American Rejects or Kelly Clarkson, like whatever the case is, like these are some big names that you're touring with, so
yeah,
I think that some people are like, oh, that sounds really cool, I want to get there, but I'm here and I have no idea how to connect the 2 dots.
for sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm not, I've been, I don't want to confuse it. I've been really lucky, but at the same time, like I've worked really, really hard. And especially in LA, like there's a lot of opportunities, but there's also a lot of other people trying to do the same thing
Yeah,
too.
sure.
Like you have to stand out somehow. But yeah, so to kind of answer your question, I guess. Yeah, I mean, how do you get there? For me, it was, the time that I spent outside of everything else. There's YouTube is a great resource. There's a ton of online classes, like there's a lot of ways where you can learn what things are, and it's especially with like studio to live as well. An EQ is an EQ. It's going to do the same thing regardless. Like the same basic thing. It's just the application that's a little bit different. So learning what those things are on your own time, and then when you show up to some of these events or rehearsals or whatever, and then taking the time to go, okay, well, here's what I learned outside of my life, outside of my work. I'm going to put it into practice here, or I'm going to try these things here, or there's nobody in the studio today. I'm going to take this recording that I have that I found online, and I'm going to play it through this console, and I'm going to make a mix through this console with a fake band, on the recorded tracks, and try to figure out, okay, how does this all work? How does the routing of this work? How does, if I, slam this compressor here, how does that affect everything else? If I do this and this and this, how does that, and just kind of, putting in the time when you're not in front of people to learn what all of those things do and get really comfortable with it, so that when you are in front of those people, you can do the thing. I think the hardest thing about, getting into the live side of music is the things that you can't prepare for. Like you can't sit in a classroom, you can't sit on an interview, you can't do whatever and learn about how to stay cool under pressure.
Yeah, sure.
So, when you have 20,000 people around you and something isn't working, everybody's going to stop and look at you, and you got to figure it out in the, the next few minutes. And sometimes things happen. Sometimes it's not even like anybody's, fault. The best way to prepare for those types of situations is to know exactly what you're walking into. Be like, this is the console that I'm using. I know everything about it. So I'm confident with that. When I get to a show and something goes wrong, I know how to fix it because I'm not worried about like figuring out how does routing work on this or whatever.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was really rambly, and I don't know if I really answered the question.
No, absolutely.
But,
it's really very, very true. And in fact, maybe in a couple of minutes, I'd love to hear some issue stories, just like those, like, 20,000 people are looking at you because blind, whatever the case. But before we get into that, I want to, even talk about even the studio that you worked at. The studio that you worked at,
Mhm.
was like were like big name artists coming in to rehearse, or was it
Oh
just
yeah.
like oh okay, so like they were already
Oh yeah.
established and you had the opportunity to get in with them kind of thing.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So how did that connection happen? How did you even get that opportunity?
I knew before I moved to LA, from my playing in band touring days, I knew like a handful of people in Los Angeles, and one of them just happened to find this studio and start. He started working there, and he connected me as soon as I moved to LA.
Hmm.
Um, and I went in, saw what they were all about, and just kind of, started running with it. I said, sadly, sometimes it just is the connections.
I don't know if I put sadly as the pretense for that though, because I think that it's true, yes, but like to some degree, like I think the ball is in your hand. Like you
Yeah,
had the guts to first of all ask, but two, like you can make
for sure.
connections. You can
Oh
say, "Hey,
yeah,
my name is
100%.
Jacob." You know what I mean? And like just not in a scummy kind of way, but in like a genuine
Of
like,
course.
"Hey, maybe there's something that I can do for you that you don't we don't know about until we start talking."
Oh
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. There was so many people that came in and out of that studio that like in multiple different ways that you know either taught me things, or I could have been, I know a lot of those bands actually somebody came in to rehearse. The person who was helping them set up for the rehearsal helped them a lot, or showed them something new, and the band was like, hey, you seem to be really cool, you know what you're talking about, do you want to come out on the road with us? Sometimes that's as easy as it is. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not exactly what happened with me, but I have a few friends at that same studio that's exactly what happened with them.
So now fast forward kind of along the line of the thread of relationships and connections. You were just on tour with Ty Verdes, and then now you're on tour
Mhm.
with American Rejects. How do you go from gig to gig? It's not like you're putting like a
Yeah.
you know help wanted thing, like you're available for work. So like, how does that connection happen that you constantly stay on tour with different bands?
Again, it's a little bit of luck and a little bit of hard work, and a little bit of connections. I worked for a band a couple years ago named Girlfriends, and it's like this pop punk band. They're super dope. If you're into that world, you should check them out.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
I worked for them, and their MD, their musical director, was also Ty's MD. They found out that Ty needed a new front of house guy, and he was like, "Oh, I remember this kid Nick from this other band. I should call him and see what he's doing." And so he called me and was like, "Hey, we need somebody to come in for these couple shows. Do you want to do it?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course I want to do it. Absolutely." And then, of course, the other side of that is I was only scheduled for a handful of shows, maybe six or something for sure. And then the rest of it was if it works out,
Yeah,
you know? And so, I came in and I killed those first, six shows. I was as prepared as I possibly could be. Came in and I nailed it. And then I didn't stop touring with Ty for a long time.
yeah.
you know,
How does just a brief question on that? How does gear work with that? Do they provide gear? Do you provide gear? Do you provide like a runner and say, hey, I need all this? How does that work?
So let's talk about gear in multiple ways. So we'll talk
Sure.
about backline gear first. So each of the musicians say like, let's talk about for like a fly date. We're just going to fly into a show. Each of the musicians is going to say, this is what I use. The drummer's going to say, I need this drum set with these heads, with these cymbals, this number of stands. Bass is going to, I need this rig, I need this bass. We're going to travel with this. I'm going to bring my Kemper. I'm going to bring my pedals. I'm going to bring my whatever. These are the things we need you to provide. For the venue side of things, when you're a smaller artist or don't have as much of a budget or whatever, you usually just use whatever the house has, whatever the venue
Sure,
has, as
sure.
far as consoles and PA and stuff like that. When you get a little bit higher budgets and you get a little bit more clout, I guess, for lack of a better word, you can say,
Funding.
sure, but you can, like, when your name is a little bit bigger, you can walk in and be like, nope, this is what we need. I need this console. I need this
Hmm.
thing. I need these, whatever, and then they'll just get it for you. When I first started working with him, it was a little bit different because my first show, it's actually kind of funny. I didn't know any of those people except for his MD,
Sure.
and they said, here's the input list, here's the gear we're going to have for each of these shows. It was a festival run, so we were
Wow.
just flying and jumping from festival to festival, and I met none of them. I flew from LA to Norway, and 2 days later was doing a show with them. We had no sound check, we had a line check, and I said, man, I hope this works.
That is so
And
crazy.
luckily it did.
So brief question, because I'm not super familiar
Yeah,
with the whole tour line as
sure,
to
sure,
like,
sure.
and I'm super interested in it. At an artist his level, I would say decently clout, but like not like Ed Sheeran clout, obviously, right? So like at
Mhm.
his level, playing these decent festivals, gear wise, is the festival provide like who's providing the gear and how does it get there? Like, because you're not touring the Norway with like I play a
Correct.
Fender Hot Rod Deluxe, like you're not putting that on an airplane. You know what I mean? Like, what? So how does that
Correct. Yeah.
work?
Changes a little bit. We'll talk about those ones though, because that was in Europe. We're not flying with, I'm not flying with consoles or any of that kind of stuff.
Sure.
We
Yeah.
flew with just guitars and pedals basically. And we told like we advanced with the venue with each of the festivals. We said these are the things we're bringing, these are the things we need. As far as like backline and that kind of stuff.
The festival itself takes care of it. That's
Yep.
absurd, man. With just like the amount of bands and like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, the crossing wires and like of just this band uses using Kettner, this band uses Alan Heath. Oh my gosh, man.
Yeah, when it comes to consoles and stuff, though, usually what ends up happening is they look at all of the riders for each of the bands. And for anybody who's not aware, a rider isn't necessarily just like the I only need blue M&Ms or
Yeah,
whatever. It's like all of the technical specs. It's all of the hospitality. It's everything that a band has, needs, or wants. And so we'll come in and say, I have this many inputs. This is what kick drums in channel 1, this is in channel 2, this is in channel 3, whatever. It has all that stuff. They'll look at all of that and say, okay, well, your preferred console is, a Digico SD12. Perfect. Your preferred console is this and this and this and this. And they'll try to take the one that's the most common and use it. And if you want something different than that, you're going to have to pay for it yourself or kind of split the cost with the festival or whatever. So when
very
it comes
interesting.
to like the drums and backline side of things, they're a little bit more accommodating with like this drummer needs this specifically. When it comes to like the big audio things, it's it's a little bit, they try to be as accommodating as possible, but when you have, Reading and Leeds festivals or whatever
Yeah,
that hundreds of artists play a day, like you
yeah,
can't accommodate everything.
yeah.
So yeah,
That
so
is
that's when
wild, man.
that's when the advancing from the band's standpoint is good because I can say, okay, on this day I'm gonna have this console, this day I'm gonna have this console. I need to
Mm,
be prepared to walk up
mm.
to have those things.
Especially for like a
Um,
festival where there's not much time to really sound check. You're not there
exactly. Yeah,
6 hours early. So that's pretty wild.
exactly. And yeah, most of those festivals, unless you're the headliner, you don't get a sound check at all.
Yeah, exactly.
So
That's
um,
so crazy.
but when it comes to touring and that kind of things, then I can say, okay, this is what I want. Does it fit in the budget?
Sure,
Okay, it fits in the budget. Let's do it. It doesn't fit in the
sure.
budget. Well, let's cut it down to this. Does this work in the budget?
So now something again, just sticking on Ty because it's kind of relatable, just in the sense of like, I think that most musicians can kind of understand that kind of concept of like also U.S. touring and everything. So like for example, I know he
Mhm.
played uh what's it called in Colorado, Red Rocks.
Red Rocks. Mhm.
Yeah. So like something like that, you're on tour, you're playing 40 shows, 30 shows, whatever the case is. Are you bringing your console, or is every venue providing that console?
We bring everything ourselves because then you walk in and like this is what I'm gonna have. Period. I'm gonna have all the same mics. I'm gonna have all the same snake runs. I'm gonna have all the same everything. It's all labeled. It's all ready to go.
Mm,
Um, when we did Red Rocks, it was a little bit different for us because we flew in the day before, did the show, and flew out the next day. So for Red Rocks, we told them, hey, this is the stuff we need. This is the consoles we need. This is the whatever. And their audio company was killer. We just showed up and they were like, here's everything you asked for.
wow.
And it was just all ready to go. Which happens a lot of the time, not all the time, but
Sure.
you know, again, the bigger the artist you are, the better chances you have of saying, this is what we need, make it
Yeah.
happen.
So as a front of house engineer, how much work are you actually doing in the setup of the gear? Are you running the snakes and stuff, or are you just saying, "Hey, let me know when the console's set up"?
So that one is also very dependent on the artist that
Artist
you're
size.
working with too.
Sure.
Yeah. Because I know, when you get to the point of like playing big arenas and whatever, there are a lot of engineers who say, okay, I'm coming in at this point, make sure everything's done.
Sure.
And then they
Sure.
show up, they push faders, and then they leave.
Yeah.
Um, and then when you get to the smallest size of people with engineers, it's I'm coming in as the engineer, I'm mixing, I'm setting everything up, I'm running all the snakes, I'm doing
Yeah.
all the mic
Everything.
placement, and then I'm tearing it all down.
Yeah.
So it it really depends.
Sure.
Um,
So
with
your tour right now, for example, like with the Rejects or Thai or something like that. Where are you sitting on that list?
Well, so for All American Rejects, okay, two things about this. So I do front of house for every artist that I work for except the All American Rejects. I mix monitors for them, which we can talk about the differences there and all
That
that
would make
stuff too.
sense based on the video that I just watched on TikTok by you. I was like, wait, I thought he did front of house and he's side stage. How is this working out? Like, I was
Yeah,
like, oh, is he
yeah,
mixing monitors here? So I was like,
yeah,
just a little confused by it. Okay, that makes a lot more
yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah.
So then let's go back to, I guess, Ty then, I guess, if we're talking about that.
So for Ty, yeah, it's kind of split between all of us. Each of the musicians set up their own gear. Me and the monitor engineer and the tech will come in and do all the mic placements. We'll do all of all the big technical things that are on the stage. And then once that's all done, the monitor engineer will go to his station and start getting all of the things ready that he needs to do. If there's wedges or side fills or whatever, making sure that those are wrung out and they're not going to feed back, and other like wireless stuff, making sure that all of the frequency coordination is ready to go. And then at front of house, I'll go out and I'll do all of the like all of the tuning of the rig and all of that stuff to make sure that everything sounds good. For the audience once they're ready to sound check.
Sure. How much
Yeah.
do you like if you were to say from a scale of 0 to 100, how your mix, how venue dependent is it? Like how much are you changing things venue to venue, or is it kind of relatively similar, you're just adjusting things here and there?
Yeah. So it's at this point in my career, a lot of the changes that I make are more overall changes. So like you're going to have a big difference between playing an outdoor amphitheater versus an arena,
Sure.
because in an arena there's a million walls that sound's going to bounce off of, and
Sure.
you don't need as much of some things, whereas an open air amphitheater, everything's, as far as like the actual, mix itself, that changes a little bit, but it's not like insane. When you get to smaller venues and stuff, though, actually with that Thai tour, it was kind of funny when we were in Europe. One of the stages we played, there were 20,000 people there, which was also insane. And then a couple days later, we played a 250 cap venue in Berlin, which was all VIP enclosed, which was
Wow.
also very cool, but vastly different way to mix,
Sure.
because, at front of house for those 20,000, people, I don't hear the cymbals from the stage. I have to actually put
Sure.
those in the PA.
Yeah,
In a
yeah,
250 capacity venue, there's almost no drums in the PA because
yeah.
you're standing, 7 feet away from them.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, so in that way, the mix does change drastically because you
Yeah.
have to accommodate for,
Yeah.
the
Absolutely.
actual, and that part of it too. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. Full circle front of house guy over here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's really
That's what keeps
interesting,
us
man.
on our toes,
Absolutely, absolutely. So, now this is just the last question. We'll talk about this and we'll kind of move on. This is now
All
just
good, man.
a
Yeah.
broader question I'm curious about. Just something that I've always been wondering. This is an opinion question for you. Let's talk about like the musicians on TikTok, and like, because obviously that paid your bills for a while. Ty Verdes came from
For
TikTok,
sure.
and
Yeah.
so I'm curious. You take Ty, who I think has 1.5 or something like that million followers on TikTok, and then you take somebody another musician, because there's a lot of musicians that have that kind of following, but like
Mhm.
Ty is having all these crazy tours, playing the Macy's Day Parade, like Thanksgiving
Yeah.
Parade. Like, what's the distinguishing factor? If you've seen, being on the inside, what's the distinguishing factor between him and another musician with the same follower number?
Sure. 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 So here's the thing about that, and this is all
Opinion.
opinion,
Exactly. Yeah.
hopefully none of the artists come for me, but somebody like Ty just goes about his whole career very, very differently than a lot of the other like TikTok artists type that I've seen and worked with. Mostly because Ty came out and was like, okay, these are the songs. Now, let's make them translate perfectly to a show.
Okay.
So like the arrangements, the way that things are played, all of that kind of stuff has been adapted for a stage to like make those songs hit harder. Because some of his songs on the record are fake drums, some of them are real drums, but it's still kind of very like, it's a lot less like rock band, type feel. But when you get to a real show, or like a live concert, he's got real drums, he's got real musicians coming out and like actually playing those parts. And so the way that those songs are, translate is very different. Also, and he spent a lot of time, before he actually came out, to make sure that everybody was all on the same page, that the songs were great, that he was great. Um, he took things that are outside of music that he did. He took acting classes, he took improv classes, he took like
Mm,
how to be more confident, type things, and watched a lot of other artists. Why does this artist get a lot more attention than this one when they're on stage? Well, stage presence is a big one. Can
he's
you
got a
teach that?
ridiculous stage
No.
presence. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and then when he said, "Okay, I'm ready to do a show," he said, "I'm going in LA. I'm going to get the best musicians I can possibly afford. I'm going to get the best engineers I can afford. I'm going to get all of this stuff. And even if I lose a little bit of money, I'm going to make sure that when we come out swinging, we come out swinging hard."
Hmm.
And he did. That's the thing with artists like him and some of the other ones, is that, you know, he spent a lot of time before he ever came on stage to prepare himself. And he learned as much as he possibly could from business sides of things and all of
Hmm.
that. And then he toured really hard, which has goods and bads. I mean, burnout is a real thing.
Sure.
But that being said, the more you tour, the more people you get in front of, and the more listeners you get, and all that kind of stuff too. So going back to some of the other TikTok artists, they think that the way that their songs are on the record is just going to be like, poof, here it is, when you show up to a show, and sadly, that's
Mm.
not always how it goes.
They just don't
And some
translate
people,
what you're saying, essentially.
yeah. And sometimes, like, a lot of those artists just don't know. And that's okay. Like, I'm not shaming anybody for
Sure,
that, but
sure.
sometimes you just don't know that, like, it takes this many weeks of work before a tour to actually put the tour together.
Yeah, yeah.
It takes this much money to get to get all of the advancing stuff done correctly. It takes this much money to rent all the gear. It takes this much
Sure.
money to do this. And again, that's not a shaming thing. That's
No,
just
yeah.
you know, that's one of the reasons I think why a lot of those types of artists don't make it as well, is because they aren't fully ready for it. They try to
Sure.
jump in at the, like, well, I have a million followers, so
Yeah.
I'll have a million
Very
people at every
interesting.
show.
Yeah, very different. Very, very different.
Just because you have a million followers and people love what you do on the internet, or even if you show up with the best show possible, doesn't mean they're going to show up.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes people just don't come to shows,
Which is
and
also
it's
why I found
weird.
it very interesting, like that he, again, as a musician, I have this very interesting thing, which is a good thing and a bad thing with the creative mind, is like, I also really love business too. So like
Hmm.
that business analytical side sometimes hinders my creative side because I'm like, is this really a
Yeah.
good creative idea? Right. But then again, I have to try to balance both of them. So I'm always studying other artists. That's why I'm actually really curious about this stuff. Is like, because I've noticed, I'm like, hey, this guy has more followers than Ty, but like he hasn't played a single show, or like he plays these,
Hmm.
50 cap venues, and it's like it just doesn't. So I've always been curious. So you're essentially saying that sometimes like he did all this work before he even necessarily even popped off or really put himself out
Oh yeah.
there,
Yeah.
as opposed to these guys that maybe pop off on two or three songs, have nothing. It's like, it's a very shallow foundation. Very
Correct.
interesting. Very, very
Yeah.
interesting.
He put in a lot of
Yeah.
time before, before
Sure.
really, going off. And yeah. Yeah.
No, that's
So
very, very fascinating, because like it's just I think that actually that whole conversation right there is thinking it would be really really cool for people to hear, just because like everybody wants to be the next overnight sensation. Like, oh, I just put out one video, because the truth is one video can change everything. You could put out 100
100%.
videos,
Oh yeah.
and your
Absolutely.
101st can be the one that changes everything.
Yeah.
But if you're not necessarily even prepared for that change, you'll have a
Exactly.
million followers but still be playing a 50 cat venue, which
Exactly. Yeah.
is a punch to the gut, man. It's a punch to the
Hmm.
gut for sure.
Hmm.
Very, very interesting.
Or if you rely too heavily on things like auto tune to
Yeah,
get you through a studio recording, and then you get to a
sure.
live setting and you can't sing on pitch,
Yeah,
nobody's ever going to come listen to you. You gotta it sometimes that's just what it is. You
yeah.
got to put the time in before to be ready for it.
So I have a very actually interesting question for you, as somebody that
Mhm.
is now on tour and does a lot of front of house stuff. You see a lot of things with live music, but also seem to be like pretty what's the word I'm looking for? Like you have a decent online presence. Like you post on TikTok. It's not 1980 anymore, where like you get famous by people seeing you at live shows, right? So I'm
Sure.
curious. You made a comment. I just want to see hear you expand on it. Like you get in front of more people hear your face, see your face, and hear
Mhm.
your music. In a
Sure.
world where like TikTok and Instagram are real and YouTube are a thing, how do you think the artists find the balance? Again, this is just your opinion of what you've seen in over through the years between the importance of live performances versus um, focusing more solely on online presence. Like, do you think if
Mhm.
somebody focused 100% on online as opposed to touring, they'd be bigger, or do you think if they put on focused more on touring, I'm just curious.
That's hard. Honestly, that's really hard because the answer is both. And I also think it comes down to like what the artist actually wants. Because I know some artists who love making things and who love doing like the stupid TikTok videos and love like just making, but they hate touring. They
Sure.
don't want to play shows. And so if that's what
Very
you want to
interesting.
do, then go do it, man.
Yeah.
Like there's such an opportunity for that. And I know a lot of people who just want to like get out and tour. And if that's what you want to do, same thing, get out there and do it.
That's a great
And
answer. That's a great answer.
but I think where we sit today, unless you're somebody like let's take the All American Rejects. Their social media presence pre 2020 was I love them, but it was abysmal.
Yeah.
Like it
Sure.
was just they posted sometimes, but it
Yeah.
wasn't like,
But
as
that's
big.
also
And then
because they were famous way before social media.
that's
Like that's
exactly
a
it.
hard you're
Yep,
telling like you're trying to teach an old dog new tricks. Not that they're old, but I'm saying like,
yeah,
even 15 years TikTok, I mean sorry, Instagram only came out 13 years ago. Like so if
exactly,
you had a hit in
exactly.
2010, you know, that's before Instagram was even a thing, like
100%.
crazy.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like they don't have to focus on social media to be touring and playing,
Oh,
10,
see,
20,
that's very
12,000
interesting.
capacity. But I think for anybody, starting today or really trying to take off today, you pretty much have to do both.
Sure.
Like if you're trying to tour, you have to do both. You have to get your name out there somehow. And the internet is just kind of the easiest,
Yeah.
best way to reach huge audiences without a huge, hit to your bank account.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
you could go out and do these huge tours and or do the little tours, build up, or buy onto a really big tour or whatever, but that's expensive.
Yeah.
So you know, my suggestion for people today is you have to find the balance of both, and
Hmm.
you have to find the balance of both without burning yourself out,
That's a
which is
phenomenal
really
answer.
hard.
Very interesting phrase you just said. Buy yourself onto a bigger tour. I've never heard that phrase before. So can you elaborate onto that?
So there are tours that now I'm going to use names here that I know this is not what they did. So I need to,
Big
put that
preface.
out there.
Yeah, sure.
But let's say I'm no name artist Nick, and I want to get on the Taylor Swift tour. I could reach out to their management and be like, hey, I want to buy onto this tour. What would that entail? And they could say, if they're looking for somebody to buy onto a tour, they could say, you know what? It's going to cost you $1.2 million, but you can play this many days of that tour. And I won't make a profit from it. I can maybe from merch. Uh, I won't make anything else. I'm paying to be on that tour, but I'm also paying to be in front of,
Stadiums.
80,000 people
Yeah,
a day. Um, it's way more common. Obviously, like I said, Taylor's not doing that. Taylor handpicked who she wanted
sure.
on that tour.
Exactly.
And it's way more common in like smaller bands and rock bands and stuff. Like, a smaller metal band coming to another band and being like, "Hey, you know, I want to do this tour. Is that something you're interested in?" Or sometimes those bands managers will reach out to smaller bands and be like, "Hey, we're looking for somebody to do this tour. It's not going to cost this, but would you be interested in buying on?" And that's a real thing. It's a marketing thing to just be like,
That just blew my
yeah,
mind because I
yeah,
had no idea that that is the case.
yeah,
What? Because I always assumed it's all relationships in the sense, and of course, this even this is relationships. You have to have a good relationship with
sure,
people,
yeah,
right? But I thought it was more so like, hey, so and so, your music's kind of similar. We're on the same label, whatever the case is. Come on
yep,
tour with us.
yeah,
But I didn't even know the buying on tour was an option. And why not though? Why not make an
yeah,
extra? You tie your name to
yeah.
another band. If the band has even a little clout, tie your name to them. Make money from them coming on tour with you, and
Mhm.
that's brilliant. And both sides, it's a very
So
mutually.
exactly, it definitely works out on both sides. I
Wow.
knew a band a couple years ago who knew they weren't going to make a ton of money on the tour, that they were headlining and they weren't going to make a ton of money on the tour. And somebody approached them about buying on, and they said, well, yeah. And so they didn't pay a lot to get on the tour, but it kept expenses low because the venue didn't have to pay that artist, the one who was buying on.
Sure.
They don't get paid, so that is the downside. But all that buy on money went straight to the headlining band, so they
Yeah.
actually made a little bit more money on the tour, and they helped another smaller artist get in front of people and all that stuff. I mean, it's not crazy common.
Okay, that
I
was
will
my
say
follow-up
it's not.
question. Is like, what would you say percentage-wise if you had to guess? Like, is this
Oh
happening all
yeah,
the time?
no, no, no. I mean, maybe overall 10%
Okay,
maybe. Like it's not crazy common, but it is a thing that the artists have done in the
very
past and could
interesting.
do. Yeah, it's a
Hey,
new
it's a
way to play
great
with.
business move, man, on both
Yeah,
sides
yeah, yeah.
too. I mean, it
Of
could be.
course.
It could also be a terrible business move, but it could be a
Yeah,
very,
yeah,
very, very. That's very interesting. Very
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
You mentioned being on tour. Like the whole year essentially, correct?
Pretty much. Yeah, yeah.
What does downtime look for like for you? Like, what do a tour downtime and also just general downtime when you're home?
Tour downtime kind of depends. Usually, it's very uneventful. Usually, it's sleep and laundry. So not glamorous.
Yeah,
Every once in a while, we'll go out and do something fun. We had one actually on the Rejects tour here. We had a day off uh, in Buffalo, and I have a friend in Buffalo, and we went and hung out and got dinner and stuff. And he's like, "Hey, come with me. We're gonna go do this thing." And he brought me to an airstrip, and I was like, "What are you?" And we ended up getting in a plane and going and flying over Niagara Falls
that's
in
crazy.
like this like 3-4 person plane. So like sometimes you can have downtime and be able to go on and
Sure,
do
sure.
crazy adventures or amusement parks or all of those types of things. But generally speaking, it's
Yeah,
laundry and sleep.
sure, sure, sure.
Uh, when I'm home, it's kind of all over the place. I mean, the first couple of days when I get home, I generally shut everything off, and I do nothing. Maybe I watch some TV and whatever, but I don't do much because I mean, tours are exhausting in a lot of ways. You're just constantly going, and we all need that downtime. We need
Sure.
that time to just kind of reset and rest and whatever. And so usually that's what the first couple of days look like. And after that, it's 6 loads of laundry. I have a couple other random endeavors that I do. I still kind of play music and for myself, and maybe one day I'll put another record out. We'll see. But a lot of just the same stuff that everybody else does.
Sure,
Going
sure.
on hikes and exploring little adventures, hanging out with my friends.
Yeah,
Stuff
very
like
cool.
that.
I saw on your
So.
website that you offer services of like online concerts essentially, like mixing online concerts, and like your team will come in
Mhm.
and set everything up from a backyard concert to an arena style production was the quote.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I thought that was really interesting. I kind of just want to hear your perspective on an online concert because almost exactly 1 year ago, October 7th, I put on an online concert and I rented out a
Mhm.
TV studio. And it was
Nice.
so much work and so much money, way more
Mm.
than I anticipated. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um, so as somebody that does it professionally, though, I just love to hear your perspective on it and like
for sure.
tips of the trade and anything you could share with because I think that a lot of artists will utilize online shows. Whether that could also just be a YouTube video, essentially, like putting
Yeah.
5 songs on YouTube is an online show to some degree, right?
Mhm.
So, like, just your perspective to help other artists that are looking to do something similar.
To preface this, that wasn't really like the online concert thing wasn't really a thought for me um, pre 2020.
Sure.
When we were all kind of stuck inside and trying to figure out how to live and make money and it's still got our out there, during 2020, that's when that kind of popped off. And so that's kind of where that started for artists that couldn't go out and play shows.
Yeah.
But now it's kind of become a thing where like sometimes you don't realize the potential in that either. When you do a tour, not everybody can come to those shows. Like especially, you know, we're gonna play an East Coast tour. Well, cool. Unless you decide to get on a plane and pay for hotels and everything else, somebody on the East Coast is never gonna see those shows,
Yeah.
or somebody in Europe, or somebody
Yeah.
whatever. But you do a concert online and anybody can see it.
Yeah.
And so there's a huge potential for like the amount of people that can see it. And there's also a huge potential in what you can do with that. So you have the video, you have the audio, you have all that stuff. You can use it for promotional things. You can use it for the concert itself, tickets and whatever else. You can use it to then create a live record that you can sell and promote and put on Spotify and stream. And, so there's a lot of like upsides to that. But, that being said, there are also a lot of there's a lot of work that comes into it to get video together, to get audio synced to the video. Yeah. I mean, and then you still have to pay somebody to, one, record the show when you initially play it.
Yep.
And then two, to mix and master it to actually be put out to streaming and to audio, or to to video streaming for the concert side of it, and then audio streaming for Spotify, Apple, whatever else. So there's a lot more steps that go into that than some people realize. But I think at the end of the day, it's a really, really good way for bands who are like, hey man, I can't afford to go out and play this tour. But I can take a quarter of that money and put it into the online show, and you can interact and do the whole thing. And then we can sell it as a live record. We can do, all this other stuff with it. So there's a lot of potential. It's just,
that's a really, even for larger names though, to some degree, like, how many people, you mentioned Taylor Swift in this talk, like I would love to go to a Taylor Swift concert, but can't shell out $1,200 for a show. So even for her to be like, at the end of her tour, be like, hey, we're doing, 2 nights
of online. Did you see what she just did?
No, I didn't. Well, I didn't see it.
She partnered with, I think it's AMC, and they're literally doing that in movie theaters.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Is it pre-recorded or is it a live stream?
No, it's pre-recorded.
Okay.
But still, I mean, from like the technical side of things, the pre-recorded is the way to go, and that's pretty much how it always actually is, because if an internet connection is bad, the concert's going to suck, even if it's for the person viewing it. So you want to make sure that every piece of it is the best it can be.
That's crazy. Exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So so like now for $14 you can go see her. Now of course you don't have 80,000 screaming fans, but like you can still. Or what if she didn't even like you said, like there recently I was online and I was like, oh, this band's they said we're going on tour. I'm like, this is sick. I want to see them live. And like it was in like Texas, and I'm like, they played like 9 shows in Texas. I'm like, that's cool, but like that's really far from me. Like I'm not gonna see it. Yeah. So it'd be cool if we're doing 10 shows, 9 shows in Texas and 1 online. That's a great idea, actually. That's a really cool idea.
Yeah. So and there's a lot of services that can help with that too. Yeah. And not even just me, but like online services that can help you sell the tickets and put the stream together and make it look professional, and then you can sell exclusive merch. Like there's so many pieces of it that I think it's profitable for a band, but also I think fans really love.
So what are you looking forward to with this upcoming tour? Are you on touring with Rejects with this one?
Yeah. So with the Rejects tour, the way that it worked was we did basically the East Coast half of the US. We took 2 weeks off, and then we did the West Coast half of the US. The first half was amazing, sweaty and hot and gross, but amazing. Absolutely insane to me in ways that I didn't even think. Mostly because I've worked with Rejects since they came back in 2020. And the first show I did with them, the whole time I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is the All-American Rejects, But now, I mean, it's the Get Up Kids, the Starting Line, Newfound Glory, and Rejects on the first leg of the tour. Wow. And I was like, this is insane. Like, I listened to all of I remember when this record came out. I remember when this, and it's so wild to me to be able to actually be a part of that. Yeah. Even from the sidelines, And the next half is the same lineup, except instead of the Starting Line, Motion City Soundtrack is stepping in.
Wow, really?
They were. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I didn't think that they toured anymore.
Yeah, they've done like a handful of things recently, and but yeah, they're coming back to do.
So now a tour like that with like the 5 people, going kind of full circle to the conversation we had earlier, except there necessarily might not be stickers on the bathroom. There are still 5 people on the bill. Do you do like you're doing in-ear monitor mixes for them for rejects. Do you do it for the whole tour, or do you do it just for rejects?
No, I do it just for rejects. Yeah.
So that's a huge tour that they're touring with. And like, if everybody
Yeah.
has their own front of house guy, then their own in-ear guy, then they're, like there's a lot of people traveling on that.
Shared a front of house guy. Then Get Up Kids, Starting Line, and Newfound Glory shared a monitor guy. And then part of the way through the tour, the Starting Line got their own monitor guy to come in, and help just them.
That's got to be a long
Then,
show too, by the way. Like, just that's a lot of artists.
yeah, it is, and I mean, Rejects played I think 75 minutes or something. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a long
Newfound Glory is
show.
playing like 65 minutes, I think.
Wow. So it's a
Yeah,
7 to 1 a.m. kind of event kind of thing.
yeah, it's a
Sure.
long day.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
Absolutely, of course,
It's
of
great,
course.
but yeah.
It's
But I mean,
still a lot of work.
yeah, I mean, from the like the production and technical side of things, though, I mean, our days, well, not all of ours, but like as a whole, the day at each venue starts at 7 or 7:30 in the morning
Yeah.
and doesn't end until 2
Yeah.
in the evening.
Set up and breakdown, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. The original question was, what
Yeah,
am I
sorry,
most
I'm
excited
just
for?
fascinated with the conversation, so I keep interrupting. It's really my fault. So
We're playing some venues that I haven't done before. I mean, I don't know, just getting to hang out with people that I actually like,
yeah,
and play music in front of a ton of people is really cool. And like I know this is kind of the cliche answer that a lot of people give, but like seeing the fans every night is so dope. Like
yeah,
seeing people who care so much about this stuff and are crying because they're, oh my God, Tyson Ritter's right there.
yeah,
Like, but still, like, that's so cool. And it's such a great like show of what music is and can be and what it does to
sure,
people.
yeah,
Like it's such a big, I mean, that's why I started in it, right?
yeah,
It's such a huge part of people's lives. It makes us feel things. It makes us
yeah,
like, you know, and so
absolutely.
like just that part of it is just it's super, super cool.
I would say, this is might be controversial, but I would say that your job at the gig is probably one of the most important gigs or jobs at the gig, because there's a quote in the music industry that goes, "A band is only as good as their sound guy," because you could be the best band in the world, but if the mix sucks, you suck as a band, and like you have
True.
such an important. I mean, now on tour, with Rejects, you do it in ear, so like it's not necessarily relating to the crowd, but if they have a sucky in ear, like their performance is not going to be great. So
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
it's maybe even just as important as a front of house guy. But anybody else you're
Of
touring
course.
front of house, like if you can't hear the guitar player and he has a sick solo, and they got people who are so if like imagine like Jimi Hendrix, guy like forgot to put up the guitar, where like you can't hear the guitar, like
Yeah.
that definitely ruined the show. You know what I mean?
Oh
Like you
yeah.
have a
Yeah.
very important role.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people ask me, well, why would I ever hire a young band? Why would I hire somebody to mix the show? There's gonna be somebody at the venue who can do it, and that's true. There is gonna be somebody at the venue who can do it. Some of them are absolutely incredible.
Yeah, sure.
Like for instance, Max, who does front of house for Newfound Glory, he was working at a venue. Newfound Glory came through and realized he was good at his job and they were like, hey, you should just come out with us, you know? So, which by the way, he's an incredible engineer, but also like you show up to venues and sometimes the guys just don't care. Sometimes the engineers there just don't care
Sure.
about you, about anything. They're just there to clock in and clock out. They don't care if your show sounds good. They don't care about anything.
Yeah, the 12th show
So,
they've done that day, like yeah, exactly.
so there's that, but also like, when you tour with somebody consistently,
Yeah,
I know that like this is where the guitar solo is. I'm going to turn that up just a little.
exactly.
Or this is where he's going to come out into the crowd, so I'm going to turn it down just a little bit so it doesn't feed back in the main PA. Or
Exactly.
whatever. Like you learn how the show goes and you can adjust accordingly. And that's a really big deal for both consistency's sake and like if the artist is paying me to be there, then I'm going to care just a little bit more
Yeah,
because
exactly. Your
first of all,
job
my
is on the
bills
line.
depend on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Whether or not you can afford the laundry on tour is on the line.
that's that's exactly it. Yeah,
Man, that's crazy.
exactly it.
So, I'm just curious now. This is now we're piquing my curiosity. What does tour life look like for you on the side that's not necessarily the artist side, but just as important as the artisting side. But like, are you spending time with the artists? Are you like, do they kind of separate the crew versus the artist? Are you on a bus? Are you in a van? Like, what does that look like?
We are all in buses. For the Rejects tour, we have uh 5 buses and 4 semi trucks
Is
for the
that just the Rejects, or is that the whole crew?
No,
Like,
that's the whole tour. That's the
so
whole tour.
including all the other like Motion City and everything. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Um but with everything else, I've become pretty a pretty bougie kid, and I don't want to do van tours anymore. I've slept too many nights on a van, on a bench in a van. My back doesn't want to deal with that anymore.
Sure. Hey, if you want more power to you, dude. If like that's like why would you go back?
Mhm. But with everything else, I mean, it's pretty artist dependent. Let's talk about for Ty. So
Sure.
Ty likes to hang out, but Ty in general is a much more introverted person. And so, which is hard
Surprised by that,
for people.
actually.
Yeah, because it's surprising for a lot of people, because when they see him on stage, he's so like energetic and into
Yeah.
everything. And that's kind of part of it, is like he gets on stage and he lets all of it go. And then when
Hmm.
he's off stage, he just needs that time to like,
Gain it
be by
back.
himself
Yeah.
and recharge, and like, and that's
Yeah.
totally cool. He does hang out, and we've done some really cool things on those tours with him and stuff, but sometimes he just likes to, tuck
Sure.
himself away, and that's fine. With Rejects, we all are a group of, silly misfits. We're together all the time. Um, Sometimes Tyson will go off and do his thing when he has to warm up and like get in the headspace for the show. And he had his wife and kid on the road for a little bit of it, so like he spent a lot of time with them.
Hmm.
Um, Nick likes to go off and make his own coffee and like do his morning routine and stuff. And we all kind of break off and do our own thing.
Sure. Of course. Yeah.
Sometimes you have to. You can't be
Yeah.
with
Yeah. You'd kill the other
anybody
two.
for
Yeah.
all the time. But
Exactly.
as a whole, I mean, we're constantly together doing all kinds of weird, stupid stuff and
Yeah.
getting into trouble, and it's a lot of fun.
That's so cool,
Uh,
man. Yeah.
yeah.
It's tour life can be some of the most fun. Absolutely. That is so
hmm
cool.
Especially when a venue decides to have a free coffee bar backstage. And so you get all hyped up on caffeine, and then you find out that they also have those automatic Orbeez guns
Oh yeah.
backstage for just
Yeah.
anybody to use. So you're all hyped up on caffeine, and then you decide to go around and shoot each other with those Orbeez guns. It was war.
That's crazy, man. So like what? Like a decently sized venue just had them all back there.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool. Like on like
they had
yeah. You
yeah,
like, and the cool part is like you'll never forget that, and like what a great memory for that venue to
100%.
provide. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like it's just a little
Yeah.
thing that these things can do. You know what I mean? Like to stand out. That is
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
Where was? Can you share
Yeah.
where that was?
Oh yeah, so that was Darien Lake Amphitheater in New York,
Yeah, upstate. Yeah.
and they did a lot of things. So they gave us free access to there's an amusement park right
Yep.
there that's
Yep.
used to be Six Flags Darien Lake, and it might be six. I don't know. Whatever, Darien
Yeah.
Lake
Yeah.
amusement park. So we went and did that, and then backstage they had bikes that we could take out. They had
Wow.
water guns. They had the Orbeez
That's
guns. They had a
crazy.
fire pit. They had s'mores at the end of the night.
That is
Uh, they
crazy.
they brought in one of the like pet adoption centers or rescues in the uh in the area, brought a bunch of dogs and just hung out with dogs backstage. They did a lot. They went above and beyond for sure.
That is so
um
cool, man.
yeah, it was
And
dope.
like
But
again though, like now when you're on tour, you're like I'm sure you'll never not stop there though, right? Like see,
oh,
like it's just
100%. Yeah,
people
absolutely.
like man, it just makes such a difference. People don't get it, man.
Mhm.
It's so crazy.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah, it
so
was cool.
crazy. Yeah, it's really cool. Well, I really appreciate your time. I don't want to take too much of your time, so I want to,
Absolutely. Yeah, no.
wrap it up and everything. But one thing I'd like to ask every single person that I have on this channel, as the final question, is with where you are now in your career, what is one thing that you wish you knew when you first started out?
See, I should have been prepared for a question like that, but I wasn't.
But I like the fact that it's not. That's why I don't get. I mean, sometimes people ask
Yeah,
the questions, but I don't prepare them with that one just because I
yeah,
like the spontaneity of like
yeah,
usually like it's more from the heart than it is like this like well here's my PR answer for what it should be like to teach the kids, you
yeah.
know.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I think okay, I'm gonna give a multi-part answer, I think,
Please,
because
yeah.
there's a few pieces of this that I wish I knew in the beginning, is what a toll it actually took on other pieces of my life. And that's not a bad thing.
what
I
is
think it's just
you referring to? Like,
touring, what
oh, okay,
touring
yeah.
does, what the tour that touring takes on you. Because like I said earlier, people get sick, you can't be there for it. When you're in Europe, if, I mean, I was out when my mom had surgery. I was out when, you know, whatever. Anyway, you miss funerals, you miss weddings, you miss holidays, you miss all of that stuff. And sometimes that's hard. And you have to be the right kind of person that can,
Hmm.
that's ready for that and prepared. And like I said before, it's the best job in the world, but sometimes you just have to be ready for that.
How do you come to terms
Um,
with that? And then, sorry, I know
I
you said
don't,
multi-part.
I realized that like there's a lot of jobs out there, and this job is not everything that people think it is, but it's so much more than, that too. And there's really nothing I would rather be doing. And, there's trade-offs in everything in life.
Absolutely.
If you're gonna, if you're gonna go work in an office job in New York, you're gonna miss out on, whatever.
Absolutely.
So you just know what those trade-offs, and be okay with what those trade-offs are. And for me, that's kind of what it was. Like sometimes it sucks that I'm not going to be around for my friend's wedding, but also, I got a multi-month paid vacation to Europe. So,
Yeah, exactly.
you know,
Exactly. Yeah. So that was part A. So part B,
it's
like
part
you
of,
multi.
yeah. And the other one is that the amount of work that you had to put in outside of work, which we talked about a little bit. And
Yeah.
the third, I guess, is just that nobody's coming to save you. You have to do it yourself. And I think that's kind of that's just a recent thing I've been learning just in general in life, when it comes to really any job or money or whatever. Like Prince Charming isn't necessarily going to ride in on a horse and hand you a bag of money and whatever. Like you're going to have to go out there and fight for these things yourself. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of it. Nobody's just going to hand you a promotion.
Mm,
Sometimes you have to go and fight for it yourself. Or like if you're getting treated improperly,
mm,
you have to stand up for yourself
yeah.
because sometimes nobody else is gonna.
Sure.
I don't know. I've
That's
been
great
down a
advice.
weird financial rabbit hole lately, so like uh that's part of it is just like nobody's gonna hand me a bag of money when I decide to retire if I haven't saved up for it.
Sure.
So, and I don't want to be pushing cases when I'm 70 years old.
Well, it's the reality of the self-employment, man. You're telling me. So I've been self-employed now 9 years. So like it's like this,
Yeah.
like, hey, I'm not 18 anymore. Like, I have a baby. Like, what's the plan for the future? Now, it's my wife is not self-employed. She's a nurse, so like it's a little different. But
Sure. Sure.
still though, like you still want to, put your get your ducks in a row, and it's a very sobering thing when you're like, or is whenever you have the realization, it's a very sobering thought.
That's very true. Or if I'd cared about what retirement would look like when I was 18, how much looking at the bank, how much money
Well,
I would have
yeah, but
now
like,
versus.
yeah, that's a again, you kind of, as to quote you, everybody sacrifices something. Yeah, like, yeah, cool. Like you could have maybe $5 million in the bank because he put $50,000 in at 18, but like the 25 that you did spend was all the tours and memories you have on Europe or whatever, like,
Oh
so
yeah.
like it's a
Yeah, yeah,
trade.
yeah.
It's a fine line of like, I know many
Absolutely.
people that have passed away way too early to even touch their retirement. So like, I'm not saying you
Yeah.
don't save or plan, but like
Oh,
it's a tough
a
one, man. It's a
thousand
tough one.
percent. 1,000%. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why, like, when I did one tour in Europe, and I said, you know what, guys, I love you, but I'm not going to fly home with you. I'm going to take my backpack and I'm going to change my flight and I'm going to go travel around for a little by myself and I'll fly home later. And like, that's also why too, because I'm here,
Exactly.
life is about living. It's not about
Exactly.
working. So,
Yeah. I
get
mean,
out there and do.
I don't know if this is entirely true, but based on just kind of brief inquiry into my mind, um, I think I know more people that died before their retirement age than I do people that are now retired and can't afford to actually be retired. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There are plenty of people
Hmm.
out there, of course. I know a handful of them for sure.
Yeah.
75 years old and still working because they can't retire. But most of those people are self-employed, so again, it's just that they just didn't plan properly, which could also very well be if I don't plan properly. But then a
Same.
lot of those, on the other hand, is like they don't want to stop because they love as a self-employed person, they love what they do so much. It's like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, I don't necessarily care. I'm 75 and I don't really care. Yeah, cool, cool. Like I could go sit on a golf course, but I love being whatever I am. So it's a
Oh,
everybody sacrifices something is the lesson for today, right?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's good stuff. And well, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat. Some really, really, really
Of course.
interesting insights. So if you can hang out for
Yeah,
30 more seconds, I just want to say a big thank you to every single person that made it to the end of this one. So very for you to hear the true ones. I appreciate you. Thank you for sticking around. There'll be links in the description for all of Nick's stuff, so you can go check it out. Nick, thank you specifically for checking out taking the time to come on the channel. Best way to support this
absolutely.
channel is checking out my own original music. So thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. God bless and peace out.